Hey everybody, welcome back to Game Esoterica and continuing series Ridge Evolution. It's a hard word to say, but it's a retrospective all the same. And if you can't tell already, we're taking a look at Ridge Racer 7 on PlayStation 3, the last numbered entry in this series and the last proper Ridge Racer game to be released as of the recording of this voiceover. But you never know what Namco's doing in the background. Maybe they've announced one before this video goes live. But it's so weird to think that the last proper Ridge Racer game was back on the PlayStation 3. We're all now playing PlayStation 5, and it's definitely fully into that console's life cycle. But if we had to lose Ridge Racer as a franchise, as a traditional arcade racing game, this was one hell of a game to go out on. Before I get too far involved, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But Ridge Racer 7 does absolutely everything I need in an arcade racing game, and while I have done an arcade series on Sega racing games, and I say they are the best in the business when it comes to this genre, Namco is like 99% as good in my opinion, and Ridge Racer 7 has perfection written all over it. Now it is true that this game in some way, shape, or form does recycle a lot from Ridge Racer 6, but obviously from watching this series you can tell already that Namco loved recycling everything from every Ridge Racer game to create new games out of them. They were the masters of recycling assets and tracks, so Ridge Racer 7 definitely has a little bit of that, but we can't fault it because it is such an incredible game. And what it does so well right off the top is just a sensation of speed and fluidity. This is a 1080p 60 frames per second game when it launched on PlayStation 3, and it still looks amazing today. Obviously it's not going to hold up as well graphically as something like a modern title, but watching this run on emulation, which I'm doing here for ease of use because of the HDCP on a PlayStation 3 console, it is just incredible still in motion. Sure, some of the backgrounds, those mountains are going to be a little bit blurry, but otherwise this still looks great. It has those traditional lens flares on the tail lights that the series has always had. I will say pretty much with every single Ridge Racer game though, I am going to show you some third-person view, but just like every other game in this franchise, doing this in first person makes the game way faster, more fun, and I think it also controls better as well. There's something about the hitbox of the vehicle on the road in third person view that I have never clicked with in the Ridge Racer franchise, but when we do first person view like right here, it just works. It gives me a little bit of an initial D vibe, at least on some of these nighttime highway stages, but this game has such a diverse roster of different courses that are going to give you so many different visual looks and things to do. Some are definitely dedicated just to drifting, others are more like highway chases, and there's levels in between that are going to have some big air jumps as well. This is basically just the Ridge Racer franchise dialed up to 11. It's the fastest game, it's got the best drifting in my opinion, it's got the biggest jumps, and it has absolutely everything you need out of an arcade racing game to make you love it. It does break my heart that this is the last mainline franchise entry for Ridge Racer. It seems to be relatively a dormant series, and I am not doing any of the patchy slot games or iOS games on this series. It is mainline only. But this jump right here, soaring through the air, touching the back end of the car in front of me, and this is what gets your heart pumping when you're playing the game. When you start to drift and you can feel the controls slip out from underneath you, but if you do it just right and you move the analog or steering wheel in just the right direction, you can recover it. That is what is so good about Ridge Racer, that sensation of speed, all of the blur on the side. Now this does give you nitrous oxide in this entry, and it is a fun component. I don't use it near as much as I should because I always forget that the game actually includes it. I'm so much more used to the earlier Ridge Racer games that were pure arcade racing, but having nitrous here is a fun bonus, and basically how it works is the more you drift around the corners and the better your drift is, the more you're going to charge that nitrous oxide tank up. Use it at the right spot, you're going to be able to totally overtake your enemies. Use it at the wrong spot, and all you're really going to do is throw yourself directly into the wall. But again, games like this just absolutely make me happy. It is such a pick up and play game, but there's so many courses in this and so many different modes. You can really sink dozens upon dozens of hours into something like Ridge Racer 7 and still have a ton to do. And all I'm really showing you here is the arcade mode, because that's really what I play the game for. The career mode isn't really for me. I just want to pick this game up, grab a wheel, and start racing. But I will say, as far as the soundtrack is concerned, I would say it's in the B tier of Ridge Racer games. It's not the worst in the world, but I think some of the earlier games are better. So go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back.
Give it your best shot. Slipstreaming. What? This one's yours.
Now that might not be the best music the Ridge Racer series has ever had, but those drum beats and the intensity do really get your heart going as far as the racing is concerned, and I appreciate the fact that unlike Sega, Namco manages to balance out the engine sound effects and the tire screeching on those drifts with the actual music. A lot of times in Sega games you can't really hear the music as well because it is just a little too loud, the sound effect department. But honestly, even though I screwed this drift up here and got caught in traffic, just look at how fast the screen is absolutely moving. It is just going as fast as it possibly can. The sense of fluidity in this game is off the charts. And don't forget, the PlayStation 3 era, there was no guarantee of 60 frame per second games. A lot of PlayStation 3 games would run at a lock 30 frames per second, and some would even dip from there because this was still the advent of the HD era, obviously the PlayStation 2 being a standard definition console still. But jumping up to this and seeing this running on PlayStation 3, it is just an absolute visual feast, and I love the drifting here, especially how long you can drift for. I can't see the road whatsoever. I'm just using my memory of the course, and when you drift around and that camera swings out, it doesn't give you the best visibility, but if you know your line and you take it correctly, you're going to feel basically invincible. And this is the type of game, if you make a mistake and you bump into the wall, that is because you did it. And it has a lot of shared vibes with the Wangan series as well, which has never really come over to console for the most part. It was also released, developed by Bandai Namco, and that's why I compare Ridge Racer 7 a little bit to Initial D, because Wangan has those Initial D vibes as well. But honestly, it's just such a pretty game, but pretty doesn't mean anything if the physics and handling system aren't up to the task to feel like Ridge Racer and to give you one of those incredible driving experiences. And I love that we still have all of the different Namco properties on the car, and the cars are 100% made up in the world of Ridge Racer. That's always been fun. They kind of look like real cars, but you've never actually seen them in real life. But this is just another one of those special games. It's been so much fun to go over all the different Ridge Racer games and play them in order just to see the evolution myself so I could talk about it from a retrospective fashion. Basically what Ridge Racer 7 is, it's everything that Namco learned developing all the games before it, trying to come out with the best possible product. And there was definitely some games in there in the Ridge Racer franchise that dipped below the quality level that the game started out with. But Ridge Racer 7 is 100% a return to form, and I know I gave you a soundtrack sample already, but listen to this track because it has a little bit more of the Ridge Racer vibes we all know and love. About 30 seconds, and I'll be back and tell you a little more about the history of the game and why I love it so much. But let's take this jump and hear some music. I don't know if that lives up to the lofty heights of some of the earlier games or R4 on the PlayStation 1, which I still think has the best soundtrack of any Ridge Racer put to music. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite Ridge Racer game is and which one you think has the best soundtrack. I would say that Ridge Racer 7's in the middle of the pack as far as music is concerned. But again, as we just pop into the cockpit view, it's so much fun to play this game. That is the main takeaway. We don't get arcade racing games like this anymore. Sure, there's the Forza Horizons of the world, and they are fun, but they don't dial into the pure arcade racing spectacle like something like Ridge Racer 7 does. It always just feels like it's kind of holding back, where something like Ridge Racer 7 feels like it's 100% in your face all the time. And as you see, we go over different surfaces as well as the previous level where we had that wet tarmac. The physics engine will slightly change to give you some more moving around, but just watch this drift right here. I love when this game gets out of control. It is wild. I hit the wall and I am now sideways looking at my opponent's vehicle from a 90-degree angle. It's those moments in the game, that risk versus reward, that just 100% sell the hype. But don't worry, if you do get a little overwhelmed, you can play the classic Namco 2D game in the beginning, and they actually have a patent on this. That's why you only see it in Namco games, and it is a fun little touch that they have Xevious here in the beginning. But again, just moving back to this nighttime course, this is Ridge Racer perfection, and I really hope one day that Namco brings this series back. Give it to me in PlayStation 5, make a big arcade racing extravaganza out of it, give me some VR and PlayStation VR 2 as well, and I would be happy as a clam, as clams like to say. And at the risk of sounding old, they don't make games like this anymore. This was from a time and place, and I know PlayStation 3 wasn't that long ago, where people like me were still buying consoles and we were in the target age range of the games that the makers were making them for. Now things have changed ever so slightly, and the pure arcade racing game experience is not not as loved of a genre. I wouldn't say it's as downtrodden as light gun games, but it is getting a little bit close on the pure arcade racing side. Of course, there's some spectacular racing games out there. A lot of them are simi, and I love those as well, but this is just the type of game that always makes me happy. Whether you sit down and play 2 tracks for 10 minutes or you play 4 hours trying to run through the career mode, you're going to have an absolute blast with Ridge Racer 7. There's a metric crap ton of tracks, a metric crap ton even more of cars, and there is a plethora of fun to be had. And as you see here, I'm in first place and I have that opponent car just bumping up against me in the rear view mirror. When you have a good run going, you have that first place and you're trying to get the checkered flag and you know you're being hunted down, every single turn matters, the intensity dials up. If you make a mistake like that, you could very well lose the lead, and that's what I love about something like Ridge Racer 7 and the entire Ridge Racer franchise. It just keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time you're playing it, and that's why I hope one day I can add Ridge Racer 8 to this series. Short of that, we are done, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.